All right, let's try this again. Good morning, everyone. This is Haley Wall. She is a patient advocate and occupational therapist living with idiopathic hypersomnia. She received her diagnosis at 18 years old during her freshman year of college. Upon completing her Master's of Science in Occupational Therapy in May 2023, Haley stepped into the world of sleep disorder advocacy to help spread more awareness about this under-recognized and misunderstood sleep disorder. Haley has created social media platforms as the Sleepy OT, where she shares her story with idiopathic hypersomnia and builds connections with others in the IH community around the world. Over the last 2.5 years, Haley has been a guest on podcasts, featured in IH awareness articles, participated in an IH virtual clinic continuing medical education activity, and was featured in an IH mini documentary. Haley is a 2024 graduate of Project Sleep's Rising Voices program and recipient of Hypersomnia Foundation's 2024 Community Advocate Award. She is passionate about using her voice to spread awareness by sharing her story with the hope to contribute to lasting impacts for greater acceptance and advancements for the sleep disorder community. Welcome, Haley.
Hello. Thank you so much. I am so honored, first of all, and excited to be speaking to you all about advocacy today. I want to start off with just a little introduction about myself. I am a pediatric occupational therapist living with IH. I am a proud dog mama. I am a military spouse. I love arts and crafts, DIY projects, plants, listening to music, and I am currently in my sourdough baking era. So that's a little bit about me. Aside from advocacy, you can typically find me doing a little bit of all of those things. To give you a better understanding of my journey in advocacy, I want to take you back to the very beginning. When I was 5 years old, I gained one of my most cherished roles in life as a big sister. And my small family of 3 quickly grew to a family of 5 with a set of twins, brother and sister. I can remember the day that they came home and always wanting to be my mom's helping hand. And, this role is one that I cherish so much still this day. I loved to be active. I danced, I played soccer, basketball, you name it. I loved to be outside and play with my siblings. It was at the age of 8 years old that my family started noticing some concerning signs that ultimately led me to a diagnosis of type 1 diabetes. So from a very, very early age, I was thrown into the world of having to be more self-aware than a typical 8-year-old would have to be, but also started my journey in advocacy at this time. I was the team captain of diabetes awareness walks. That first year that I did one, I was the ribbon cutter for the walk in Boston. And I also was a patient advocate and a youth ambassador for young individuals living with diabetes. I was a very, very shy child, and I'm just so grateful for the support that I had in role models from my healthcare team to my family and my friends, and I can attribute where I am today because of all of that support from everybody. When I was about 11 or 12, my sister's health began to take a turn. Now, you might be thinking right now, why are you telling me about your sister? And I promise it'll make sense in just a few minutes. My sister was about 9 when she started to begin experiencing growing pains, ultimately leading to her being wheelchair dependent just a short 2 years after. This was a picture of me at my diabetes walk that I forgot to press the slide for, and this is me and my sister. When I was diagnosed with diabetes, my mom quickly stepped up to the role of being my advocate when I didn't have my voice yet. When my sister started experiencing these symptoms, my mom took on the exact role she did with me, fighting and advocating for more testing for someone to help my sister figure out what was going on. From the age of 8 years old, my mom was someone, I'm gonna get emotional, I love her, that I looked up to. And she taught me how important self-advocacy was, both in healthcare and my everyday life. So I'm telling you about my sister and myself because I was not only on the receiving end of advocacy from my mom, I witnessed how important it was to be an advocate for someone else with my mom and my sister. And this is my mama. So, from 8 years old, I've always been able to see the value and role of advocacy, not just for myself, but for other people too, leading me to this extreme passion for advocacy today. I'm incredibly honored to stand beside so many amazing sleep advocates in this community, using our voices and journeys to influence change. I want to thank my mom, who I know is watching virtually right now. I would not be where I am today without my mom's influence and unwavering support when it comes to advocacy. So, Mom, thank you, and I love you. Okay, for the sake of time, I'm not going to go really deeply into a lot of what I've been in for my advocacy efforts, but I'm going to briefly touch upon it. I began my journey in IH advocacy just a few short years ago after passing my certification exam and becoming a registered occupational therapist. When I was searching for IH resources, at this time is when I came across Hypersomnia Foundation and reached out and really wanted to get more involved. I was also searching on social media for other people living with IH, and although I was able to come across some content of people living with IH, there really was not a lot, and there was a big gap that I was seeing in patient voices for IH. So that's when I began my own social media pages as a sleepy OT. I was incredibly nervous to begin that journey, especially sharing such vulnerable experiences on such a public platform. But I kept finding myself thinking about, my mom's influence in me and how important advocacy has been in shaping me and who I am today. So I went and started posting. The scariest part about starting these very public platforms was the fear of failing. And, I never really had much of a social media presence before I started these. So I was very, very nervous about what this journey would look like. The fears were very quickly diminished by the responses from so many in the sleep disorder community. I'll admit, I may not be the most consistent in posting on my social media due to life being a little overwhelming at the moment. But what keeps me going is knowing that there are people like you guys that feel less alone and seen in your own lives. I know the people that stick around for my social media platforms are there for the right reasons, and I am so grateful for the grace that all of you have given me during this stage of life. Not only have these platforms been a resource for others, I had no idea the impact they would have on my own personal life. I did not know a single person with IH or narcolepsy when I was diagnosed, and that went to about 2 years ago is when I met just online. The conference last year was the first time I met other people in person. I've been very, very blessed to have had opportunities to share my story in articles featuring IH, various podcasts, was a guest speaker at last year's Beyond Sleepy conference. I'm a graduate of Project Sleep's Rising Voices program, a patient voice in a continuing medical education IH virtual clinic, and featured in an IH mini documentary. These engagements have provided me an avenue to pursue a passion where not only am I able to advocate for greater public awareness, but also serve as a voice for so many that live so misunderstood. Now that I've given you a background on why I'm qualified to stand up here today to talk about patient advocacy, I want to shift to talking about how using our voices as patients with these rare sleep disorders can play such a significant role in advancing IH awareness on various levels of advocacy. As patients, using our voices, we can help increase public awareness and understanding of sleep disorders like IH. As we have all mostly experienced, society's view on sleep disorders is not very kind. We hear terms like lazy, it's not real, you have poor health, when that's not the reality. This view negatively affects not just those of us who are already diagnosed with this condition, but also others who are struggling and trying to figure out what's going on. As you know, this societal stigma is so negative that may deter someone from even exploring the idea. Using our voices can help others recognize symptoms. So in that same public awareness type of advocacy role, Before I was diagnosed, I had never heard of the term idiopathic hypersomnia before in my life. I've heard of narcolepsy a little bit, but I was very unfamiliar with the sleep disorders in general. So I had no idea that the experiences that I was having were actual symptoms of a sleep disorder. Being able to recognize symptoms and medical terminology associated with idiopathic hypersomnia can be that much more significant in someone's life, struggling with the struggles we've all experienced, and make a difference where they can bring to their healthcare team medical terms that they will understand. It's not necessarily as important for us as patients to be very well versed in medical terminology, but it's important to be able to explain and describe what we're experiencing in a way that's not dismissed or just overlooked. We can use our voices as patients to increase understanding and awareness within healthcare. Although sleep disorders like IH and narcolepsy have taken steps forwards in the medical community, there are so many physicians that still are very unaware of the conditions themselves, but also unaware of how much they affect our daily life in a multitude of ways. The more we can use our voices as patient advocates in healthcare, the more we can increase awareness of the effects IH plays on our day-to-day lives. Doctors may be the experts in the medical aspects, but we are the experts in the lived experience. We can also use our voices to help increase the gaps in needs within the community to pharmaceutical companies to encourage further research and developments for treatment options. For IH, we only have one medication approved by the FDA. That's not great. Other medications that are known to be useful are used off-label, but still, there's not a lot of options. So it's essential for us to be able to use our voices and experiences in pharmaceutical research, as we are the experts in this condition, and through our lived experiences, we can provide valuable insights to drug development. And lastly, but certainly not least, is we can increase awareness and needs within the world of clinical research to influence increased research on areas that are underrepresented in IH. There's already such little known about this condition to begin with. The need is very high for more research in the clinical world. So the more we as patients use our voices to raise awareness about the gaps in care, the more we can play a role in influencing these much, much needed clinical research developments. So I recognize that not everybody is comfortable sharing about their experiences on such a public level. I want to start by saying, if that is you, that is completely okay. There is no shame or disregard if you do not feel comfortable sharing on social media or big public platforms. As I mentioned, I was really nervous to start these. So I want you to know that it is completely okay, regardless of where you stand and your comfortability in this. So now let's go into some options for advocacy. Clinical trials. These ones are more of the less public platform types of advocacy that you could go into. Clinical trials and participating in clinical research about IH as a patient can play such an incredibly important role in advancing the gaps in care within healthcare and pharmaceutical industries, as I just mentioned earlier. We've heard a lot about our roles as patients this weekend from physicians and pharmaceutical companies on how important it is for us to be using our voices and our lived experiences in these trials. You can visit clinicaltrials.gov and input your diagnoses and everything, and that can help you find clinical studies and clinical trials if you are interested in looking into those. Another form is getting into patient surveys. As a patient yourself, or even as a caregiver, can provide incredible insight and data that helps highlight gaps in real-life experiences that we face on a daily basis. An example of an excellent patient survey was conducted by Sleep Consortium last year, and it produced the Voice of the Patient report. Results from this survey produced this report, and data collected from the voices of us as patients was presented in front of the FDA, shining light on the real-life experiences that we face every single day. All of this data that's collected from patient surveys on our own lived experiences can help drive further research and understanding in areas that are just not talked about a lot. So I highly encourage, if this is an area that you feel compelled to engage in, definitely go for it. Another way to get involved is patient registries. And again, this has been talked about a lot this weekend. Patient registries can help further accelerate research, developments of new therapies, and expand the understanding of sleep disorders. There have been so many talks this weekend about CORDS and the DREAMS portal and the research that has been conducted from all of the data that's been in those registries, and it's so essential. So this is another way on a less public level, if you are comfortable here, to be able to use your voice and enact change for those of us in this community. For those of you finding yourself feeling more comfortable on more public platforms of advocacy, I do want to share some avenues you can take where your voice can play a role in change. In today's society, social media has become more and more prevalent. With that being said, sharing your life with IH on social media can be really intimidating and overwhelming. And I do want to assure again, I was in that same exact position when I started my journey on social media. However, since doing so, not only have I been able to make connections with so many of you sitting in this room today, but I've made connections with people living with IH all across the world. I've had family members reach out asking on advice on how to support their loved ones. I've had people new in their diagnosis journey asking for advice, people looking for advice on how to go about exploring a diagnosis. There's so many avenues in which social media has provided me the ability to be a stronger advocate and use my own personal experiences to help others feel less alone and increase more understanding and awareness on the societal level. If you are not comfortable making your own content for social media, another great way to use your own social media platforms is to share content from other creators and platforms, and that is just as effective in increasing awareness in that space. Another way is participating in established social media initiatives like Hypersomnia Foundation and IH Awareness Week with Hypersomnolence Australia has been doing. They are incredible ways to get more people understanding what it is that we experience. And this year's theme of More Than IH is such a beautiful way to encompass that, yes, we experience so many different things in our lives that are really hard and challenging, but we are also so much more than our diagnosis. Another avenue that's been incredibly beneficial in my ability to share my story in a meaningful way has been through Project Sleep's Rising Voices program. I was able to complete their program last year, 2024, and have now been able to share my story to an undergraduate group of future healthcare professionals, and also did a live story sharing event on YouTube last week, I believe, as an initiative for this year's second IH Day. Going through this program helped me formulate my story in a relatable and professional manner, where I'm now able to speak to various different groups and to help spread more awareness on idiopathic hypersomnia. If you are interested in looking into this training for yourself, visit their website to gain some more information. Regardless of where you find yourself ready to begin your journey in patient advocacy, I want you to know how much your voice can make a difference. The more people who share their journey and experiences, the more people we can reach to advance change in public awareness, understanding, research, clinical developments in general. Our voices are strong and we can create change. You may be thinking, okay, well, if there are other people talking about it, why do I have to talk about it? I want you to know all of our experiences may share similar things, but all of our voices are so essential. We have had our own life journey, our own life experiences that are not identical. So your voice is different than my voice, even though we are both going towards the same goal of wanting to increase awareness and advance changes in the IH community. Getting involved can be intimidating. I was very unsure, and I still kind of feel a little uncomfortable about it sometimes, but that's normal. We are, we have struggles in life that we have to balance things. So, regardless of where you're at, I want you to know What you do is fantastic. So, your voice matters, your journey matters, and we can work together by using our voices to facilitate greater change and advancements in IH awareness on a global scale. I hope that after hearing a little bit about my journey and some different ways you can start your own advocacy journey, you feel more prepared to find your spark where we can stand side by side creating change. Thank you so much for listening, and I am happy to answer any questions you may have.
I just want to thank you because I just got my diagnosis December, January. Of course, I put in idiopathic hypersomnia and you pop up. So thank you. So, yeah, of course, the first thing I do is go to social media.
Yeah.
Your videos were just so right on, and just to have someone to be able to relate.
Yeah.
And I've cried this whole time.
I also want to say thank you for sharing. And I want to tell you that I'm also a pediatric OT. And I've watched some of your information online, and I've often thought to myself how exhausted I am at the end of the day. And I just wondered if you could share some of your strategies for getting through the day, because it can be really rigorous to, go from home to home and see different kids and have your energy level be up for each child. I don't have idiopathic hypersomnia. My son does, but I would love to hear some of your strategies.
Absolutely. When I was looking for jobs, I knew I needed to look for one that was going to be flexible to my needs. I've become very aware of my functional hours of the day and very aware of the areas and times that I don't do my best. So I was able to find a job where I could craft my own schedule, and I don't work full time. I am part time, um, but I'm able to craft my schedule in a way that allows me to show up best for the clients I work with and their families, and then still have enough left in me to come home and take care of myself. So it's really about the occupational balance that's driven into our brains in school. It's so hard to actually do that. So I try as best as I can to practice efficient time management skills and um, energy conservation. And I use some sensory techniques throughout my day to help me stay more alert. And then I come home and I try to engage in things that bring me joy. So instead of all the needs that I need to do, I try to do something at least once every day that I want to do. So not only am I helping and showing up for other people, I have to take the advice I'm giving and implement it for myself. So I have found that to be where I am doing the best that I can.
My husband is a type 1 diabetic and I have IH, and having both, have you found it particularly challenging to manage your blood sugars if you can't wake up to handle things like crashes? Because I know there have been times he's had crashes in the night and tried to ask me to help him, and I can't wake up to help him.
Absolutely. Yes. So it's definitely been a challenge. I've been on a CGM and insulin pump combination system, which has made a world of a difference for me. Overnight, I'm blessed to have a body that wakes me up when I do go low. So I haven't had too much trouble in that area. But I do notice, if my blood sugars are a little bit less controlled, I am definitely more sleepy. My sleep inertia gets worse. My brain fog gets worse. So it all plays a role. So I do try my best to implement, healthy lifestyle strategies and trying to stay moving more than I usually would, just to keep my whole body healthy, and manage all of my conditions together.
All right, this is going to be our last question. We have another session going to start in a few minutes. It takes a while to get upstairs.
I just want to say thank you again for everything that you do. And when she introduced you, she listed several different ways that you've been involved in a patient advocate. And I think something that we've talked about is that it's really hard to maintain that when you have like low energy levels or you're struggling in the ways that we do. So I guess I'm wondering, I have two questions. Like, what do you think is the most meaningful way for you to interact with patients or communicate your story? And then also, like, what is the bare minimum way for you to do it? Like, if you just want to do something, but you don't have much in you, what does that look like for you?
I will say my life right now has been a little bit chaotic. Um, I've done some projects. I was in the CME activity and I did a virtual clinic and I did some articles. All of that was, I was found through social media. So people have reached out to me and asked, would you be interested? And absolutely. So when I was more involved in those, I definitely was pulled even more back from social media. But I think finding where you are most pulled to is what's going to keep you going. If you're passionate about it, if it brings you purpose, it's going to not feel like a chore. And like I said, I'm not consistent all the time, but the people that are there for the right reasons and who support me for me, accept me for who I am, they're going to be the ones that stick around. So, regardless of what you're sharing, how often you're sharing, it's still meaningful. And, whatever it is you are sharing is important. The second part of your question, social media, honestly, has been the most meaningful way. Just being able to even connect with so many people around the world has been eye-opening for me. Outside of the US even, it's just crazy that all of these people have come across my pages and like, oh my gosh, yeah, I do have the same thing. It's really cool and it's neat. So even if it's not this huge awareness, public awareness of advocacy, being able to connect as a community has been huge over the last 2 years since starting my pages.
Thank you, everyone. That's all the time we have.